Amen.
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 So we're continuing with Julian of Norwich, who I have found to be a really fascinating person. And her thoughts on God as mother and some of the things that she wrote and had to say about that. She says that
What,
Oh, there's your German.
what's it say on her book?
the second person is a merciful mother who shares our sense-based nature and keeps our duality united in whole. In Mother
What
Christ.
does it say on her book beside divine love? Can you
What-
see that bigger than I?
What's that?
See her book she's holding in her left hand?
Oh,
See the book she's holding in her left hand? It's divine love. What's it say above that?
Revelation of Divine Love, which is the name of her book.
I got it. Thank you.
Yeah. In Mother Christ, we are nurtured so that we grow. And in Mother Christ's mercy, we are reshaped, restored, and reunited with our spiritual sense through the power of Christ's endurance, death, and resurrection. You remember before we had talked about how prior to this, God and Christ were depicted as a conquering warrior who defeated Satan. And this was kind of a transition of a new way of looking at God around this era, both by Julian of Norwich and St. Anselm, who had done some writings. It was kind of very much a paradigm shift looking at God as mother.
And she's not talking about Mary. She's talking about God.
Correct. She's talking about
The
Jesus
mother.
Christ as mother, yes. Or God as mother. She's not talking about Mary, you're right. She says, this is our mother's work in all of us who yield ourselves to Christ. Jesus is our true mother, the mother of our human nature. That's which we were created to be. Hey, this is very apropos since it's Mother's Day today.
Yes.
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 Jesus is also our true mother by grace because he chose to take on our human nature. All the qualities of motherhood come from the second person of the Trinity, where we are kept whole and safe, both in human nature, by spiritual grace, fed by Christ's particular goodness. She said we can consider God's motherhood from three perspectives. The first is that the divine mother gave birth to us and gave us life. The second is that she shared our lives, referring to the incarnation. The third is that she works always to keep us safe. The motherhood of mercy and grace restores us to our true natures, that which we were made to be by the motherhood of love, the motherhood of being. No one can mother us the way Christ does. Christ's labor pains were suffered on the cross where we were birthed into joy. Any natural loving mother knows and understands her child's needs. She watches out for the child with vigilant tenderness. And as the child grows, the mother's care changes, but not her love. So at some ages, the mother may allow the child to experience pain so that the child will grow in maturity and grace. in the same way, our protector works with us. Christ is the mother of both our human nature, our sense selves, and our spiritual being. And sometimes our sense selves must suffer so that our spiritual beings grow. Our mother wants our love to be focused on her. Motherhood is the essence of natural love, wisdom, knowledge, and motherhood is God. When we fall, God quickly lifts us up, leaping into our lives like a mother playing peekaboo with her child, reassuring the baby with her touch.
On the motherhood is the essence of natural love kind of strikes me, because when a woman gives birth, there's that, I mean, maybe that woman wasn't into motherhood before that point, but after the baby's placed on her breast after birth, there's this something innate takes place, and there's a natural bond that occurs. And so that I get the point of that particular statement.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you need, Rob. I've known people too that don't seem like a natural mother type, and they give birth, and there's some sort of change. There's a bond that happens.
Well, once they realize they're responsible for this other person, and that little baby is completely 100% dependent on them for everything, it really changes somebody.
Right.
I'm still. Go ahead.
Not to detract from those thoughts, which I agree with. There's also with birth certain hormones that come into play that encourage the mother.
Oh, well, sure. I mean, I think that's all part of God's plan, the natural,
Exactly.
That's what causes it, but I'm still doesn't detract from the effect of all that happening. I'm still I'm still amazed at this woman as an anchorite, locked in a room for 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a child dependent on outside other people.
Yeah.
But my thought was that being alone like that, except for some interaction through the hall with other people that come for guidance or food or whatever, she's alone with her thoughts, and there's no outside distractions. So all these visions and things that she has, she's more open, receptive. In our daily lives, if we don't have the luxury of that, we're busy doing this, busy doing that, and sometimes it's hard to calm your mind and to reflect on and let things come into your mind so that you can reflect on, because we're so busy. So I guess that's the benefit of all these anchorites, that they're isolated like that, and they have themselves and their thoughts, that's it. And so they can think these deep thoughts.
Right.
And she was certainly someone who wrote them down, or I guess she wrote them down.
Yes, she did.
No, I wasn't sure if she could write or whatever. Someone else did. But, okay.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, hearing God speak to you requires stillness. Be still and know that I am God. Quelling the busyness of your minds, which certainly in the world we live in today, and probably back then too, there were other things that were constant intrusions into your brain.
Yeah.
And
well, in those days, people were busy just surviving, getting food and doing that. And she had other people do that for her. So she had the luxury of being still and being able to receive.
And remember, Jillian also survived 2 pandemics.
See, that's the other thought I had. I mean, she's completely dependent on some other people, and I'm thinking of people get sick and they don't bring the food that day, or there's war that comes through her area, and she's in this thing. I mean, I guess obviously she survived. I mean, I don't know if they bring enough food for a couple days or whatever, but if the caregiver gets sick with a pandemic, she's hosed. But apparently I guess, obviously it didn't happen.
Right.
It's just a scary thought when you lock yourself in a room like that and there's no door to go out. I mean, she's all walled in, so there's not the options. Oh, I haven't had any food for a week. I better open the door and go out in search of food. No, she's locked in.
Yeah, I would go crazy. I would go nuts.
Yeah, that whole, she must have stillness of heart to, some people are claustrophobic, and so, I often think of talking about these people that are trapped in a concrete building collapses, an earthquake or something, and they're trapped for several days and they can't move and whatever. And if you're claustrophobic, you panic. But at some point you have to kind of take a breath and calm down and wait for your rescuer. So I'm thinking about this woman. That's not the same situation, but she's solely dependent on outside help, and that I'm still amazed with that, even with
yeah. It's mind blowing. It's fascinating.
Mhm.
And there she sits in her cell, writing these brilliant, insightful thoughts that were pretty revolutionary for her era too.
Mhm.
And they walled her in there with the service for the dead.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
she was living dead.
Well, death to the life that she had known.
Yeah.
Yeah, living dead girl. He says, Christ wants us to know he is not only pays attention to high and great things that are obvious and important, but also equally to small things that seem trivial, simple, and hidden. This is what he meant when he said, absolutely everything shall be well, which, by the way, she's making reference to her own vision. This is one of her visions that God said to her, everything shall be well. And that's her most repeated phrase throughout.
Did somebody say squirrel?
I think so. I heard a door open and they're alerting on it.
Watching for those buntings crash into the window, right?
I think the wind blew our back door open and then it set off the window alarm.
Even as the joyful Trinity made everything out of nothing, so the same Trinity can make well all that is not well. What seems broken is only temporary. Ultimately, it is just an illusion. Jillian says, Christ taught me to focus my attention instead on the bright and splendid fulfillment of all life. For this is the mending of what was broken. It's more pleasing to God and of infinitely more worth than Adam's sin was harmful. So this woman locked in a cell is kind of the ultimate optimist in terms of the future, in terms of eternity. She sees that in the end, God will make everything well.
Wow.
And that's her biggest recurring theme. All shall be well, all manner of things shall be well. Even though we can't see it or understand it during this lifetime.
Don't you imagine this message would have brought people to the window to talk to her and to hear this?
Yeah, right.
This is a very attractive message.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I have a problem. I go to the window and I tell her my problem. And she says, oh, don't worry, everything will be well. And so it is comforting, you know, for people.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah,
she was the world's
And saying that pain and suffering is to help you mature. You know, that, you know, you can bear these things because there is a reason for it.
right.
Mm.
Yeah, and like you were saying earlier, like Rob was saying, the turmoil of the world, you know, wars and pestilence and plagues all going on, and this is the world, your medieval world you're living in. And you go talk to Jillian, in spite of all of this anarchy, almost telling you everything shall be well. It had to be a contrast to what your daily life was like.
And they were having pandemics and Vikings and warfare between their little city kings.
Yeah.
in England.
Yep. Funny how we're all going through that again, right?
Yeah.
Nothing is ever new under the sun.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the truth.
And I think that Julian was maybe the first icon of optimism.
Yeah, right.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, to be optimistic in spite of all that stuff going on in her life and around her. She says, human nature, our truest essence, is in God. We can never clearly know our own souls until we have fully known God. She says that God opened my spiritual eyes, showed me my soul in the middle of my mind. The soul was a large and endless world, a kingdom of delight, a city of great worth.
Wow.
In the center of that city, our protector Jesus, both God and human, a tall and beautiful person, highest watcher over the realm, most joyous and solemn king, worthiest protector, clad in glory.
This is a vision.
Yes, I believe the vision's right. I saw in this vision the satisfaction and fulfillment Christ finds in the human soul. God the Creator, God the Child, God the Holy Spirit all work to create humanity's soul, and it was created perfectly. And the Trinity takes endless joy in the human soul.
Dave, I have a question.
Yes.
Do we know, how do we, okay, these are her writings,
Yes.
and you might have said in the beginning when you started the course, where were they kept? How do we have access to those?
I don't know. That's a good question. I know people brought her books, passed them through the windows so she could read. So I'm assuming they must have also passed her parchment or whatever people wrote on at that time, and ink and quills, and because I know she was literate. I know she wrote these herself. It wasn't through a scribe or anything like that. I mean, she spent a lot of time reading the other writings of her day too, and she was known to be a very educated and well, very intelligent person. although we don't know what her education was. We don't even know her real name. You remember she was named Julian of Norwich because she was at St. Julian's. She was walled into St. Julian's Church. So we call her that because we don't know what else to call her. So, her real origins, we don't know. She might have been from a wealthy family and well-educated, or she was apparently educated though, but she did do the writing herself.
Well, if she had education, she had to have come from some wealth.
She had to have, right, in that era, right. Absolutely, yeah. So she must have wrote them and kept them in her cell and passed them off to people to make copies.
Mm-hmm.
And they would take it to the scriptorium nearby, and
right, exactly. The local priests and bishops must have thought they were of value and said, let's make copies of these. These are really good. So she must have had a
Plagiarism.
Otherwise, she's just some crazy woman in a cell writing stuff down that people think is nuts. So they must have saw value in it.
well, if she was from a wealthy family, then it's very possible that her family would be funding
It's true.
some of this.
That's good. I just had that thought that they may be the ones who supported her over those years.
Yeah.
Yeah, the daughters of wealthy families who went into convents would go with essentially a dowry. There would be cash or animals or something provided to the convent. And I hate to say it, but the wealthy young nuns lived a little better than some of the others. They could have, a nicer cell or certain luxuries of the time.
Right. Yeah. It's all very, very likely, actually. And while she wasn't actually a nun, it was a very similar situation.
Yes.
She's,
You notice how in this statue that you've depicted here beside the writing, she's holding the quill as well as her book.
oh yeah, yeah.
So that's the symbol that she is the writer of this. She's not just someone studying and reading it.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and this was a project that took decades. She had most of the visions in one night, but then she spent years analyzing these visions and thinking about what they meant.
Really?
Yeah.
I would have thought they would be a series of, my goodness.
Yeah.
I could imagine how she remembers her vision, because I have dreams vivid at the time I wake up, and I might remember snippets of it, but not the full thing.
Right.
Maybe a vision is different than a dream.
Yeah, I don't know. Hers was pretty dramatic, apparently. More of a lived experience, maybe. I don't know, but she did. And then she spent years analyzing and thinking and trying to find the meaning in them. And that's what she wrote down. Most of what she wrote was her self-reflection and analysis of the visions that she had. She's the divine knows that which best suits God, and the human soul suits God endlessly and without beginning. So she sees a really strong connection between God and the human soul.
Mm-hmm.
Through all this, I saw that it is easier for us to come to know God than it is for us to know our own souls. For our souls are so deeply rooted in God, where they are so endlessly treasured that we cannot truly know them until we first know God, the soul maker, with whom our souls are united. We are truly that which God loves because of the great riches, excellence, and abilities given to our souls and knotted into our body. These knots.
Each of these statements is so profound.
I know, right?
They are. Mhm.
It's so
It's hard to take.
I just picture folks lined up at her window waiting to hear this.
Take a seat.
It's like McDonald's in Sunday morning. When I was a kid, they used to come after church. I worked at McDonald's, and the lines would go on. We have two lines at each window. We had two windows, so they'd be all lined up. So this is what I envision of this anchorite window.
Kind of like fast food philosophy.
Next.
Bob, now, after today's session, that's what I'm going to be picturing. Thank you very much.
Every time you see a line in McDonald's window, you're gonna. There must be an anchorite in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, in my day, the window was outside. You know, the restaurant was just a drive up. Oh no, we didn't have drive through. It was a walk up. So it was exposed to the elements. So different than it is today.
I have a terrible thought. Do you think there was sort of like a little spot to put a contribution when you came and spoke to?
Yeah, you might have had might have to give some food or some. Well, what would she need money for?
Nelson just said like Lucy's nickel cup. Talk to the psychiatrist. And,
Yeah.
okay, that'll be 5 cents, please.
Yeah, talk to the anchorite. One shekel or whatever the.
So she says, we are truly that which God loves because of the great riches, excellence, and abilities given to our souls and knotted into our bodies. And these knots are what makes us sense creatures, beings who perceive reality through our senses. So this is the way she sees that God created us, tying in our physical reality with our spiritual reality, which are inseparable and overlapping. She says the human soul was made from nothing. That is to say, it was brought into being from nothing that had previously been created.
She must have had visions of the Big Bang.
Yeah, yeah, maybe so. She had 14 visions one night and a 15th the next.
Oh, wow.
So it was really just over 2 days, and most of them was the first day.
And she remembered them. That's what amazes me.
I know, right? And they were all very complex, detailed visions too.
Wow.
Well, she had no distractions, of course. So that helps.
Yeah. When God made the human body, the divine hand used the earth's clay, solid matter that is a mixture of all the tiny pieces that make our world.
Yeah, carbon.
Right. Yes, right. Of course, she didn't know what carbon was, but that was her best. That was a pretty close approximation.
Yeah.
So we are both nature made, and at the same time, we are not made. So what's she mean by that? What is the only thing not made? And that's God. This is why God truly lives in each human soul with nothing between the divine essence and ours. In our truest essence, we are complete, even while our sense souls fail. No part of our nature shall die, for the highest aspects are tied to God from the time they were made. Meanwhile, God is fastened to the lower aspects of our natures from the moment of our conceptions, the moment when our souls took flesh. And thus through Christ, the two aspects of our nature are united. Our souls were created to be God's home, and our soul's home is God, who was never created. God, who is our maker, lives in our souls, and our souls live in the divine essence, the very substance from which we were created. Thus, I can see no difference between the divine essence and our own. All is God. Yet, let's be clear, only God is God, and our essence is a divine creation that lives within God. So here Jillian's writing this very poetic interpretation of our physical reality, the physical body we live in, and our spiritual reality, and how they blend together and come from God. He sees our spiritual aspects, our souls, as being one with God.
She works through a logical proof
Mm-hmm.
in these discussions.
Yeah, I find it really interesting.
Mhm.
We have been redeemed in love, set free from all the world, all that would make us less than we are called to be. In the temporal life we experience here on earth, our sense souls seldom know what our true selves are. But as human beings, we judge ourselves by looking at our changeable sense souls, which seem like one thing this minute and another the next, depending on what we are paying attention to, whether the high things of life or the low. These sense souls are what show us the outside world. The perceptions of our sense souls are variable because we focus on so many different things. Sometimes life seems good and easy, other times hard and painful. When we truly see both God and ourselves, we shall find rest and peace. Our truest nature and God's grace make us yearn to know ourselves in the perfection and completion of endless joy. When we are at peace with ourselves, we find we have become one with God. For in God there is nothing that is not peace. The essence of who we are, the very substance of our identities, is in God, and God is in our sense souls.
There seems to be a theme here.
Mhm.
The divine touch and soul, not something out of the ordinary. It is grounded in the very nature of our being. Our intelligence is rooted in God, the substance of our truest nature, and from our nature, mercy and grace spring and spread through us, accomplishing in our lives the fulfillment of our joy. This is the soil in which we grow and become complete.
Okay, I like that. Our intelligence is rooted in God, the substance of our true nature. And from our nature, mercy and grace spring and spread through us. This intelligence part, that's something that caught my attention.
Yes.
The third leg of the support in the Episcopal Church,
Yes. Yes. Reasons, right?
Yes.
rational
Reason.
thought and intelligence.
Rational thought. That's what we lack a little bit around here these days.
But you're right. It is something. Intelligence and rational thought is something we attribute to God, And we say, and Julian says that's why we have it. We have it because we're created in God's likeness, and that's where we get our intelligence and rational thought from.
That's why I have trouble with people that question certain things. And I said, well, God gave us a mind to figure these things out.
Right.
So, you know, let's use it to our best advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's also one of the things I really appreciate and love the most about our tradition is the three-legged stool, you know, the fact that we use reason and intelligence that God gave us.
Exactly.
And apparently so did Julian. So it's 9:58. I think we should probably call to close.
I think of all so far, Julian, I think is my favorite saint.
She was in writing this. She was probably my favorite in writing this class. She's just really fascinating.
Yeah. I'm still aghast at the fact that she's an Anchorage. Right? That whole idea just amazes me.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Rational all the time.
Yeah.
Well, the shame of that, or I say the shame of it is that there weren't enough people exposed to her thoughts who could have benefited.
Right.
Well, I think the possibly male-dominated hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church would not have been too keen on having a God the Mother notion.
Yeah, exactly. I think man's ego got in the way of the early church and took over and stifled some good thought.
Well,
Dave, again, I thank you for all your hard work on this.
Yes.
We really appreciate you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, you bet. We'll see you next week.